Zralith Zakor could hardly believe his compound eyes. The human, this fragile, squishy creature from a backwater planet called Earth, had just lost her arm, and yet she was laughing, for goodness sake. Private Samantha Sam Thompson chuckled, her gaze fixed on the bloody stump where her left arm used to be. "I just got this uniform dry cleaned!" The Valkyrie battlecruiser shook with another explosion, sending Zralith Zakor and his fellow Thyrek Marines sprawling across the deck, but not Sam. Oh no, she simply widened her stance and braced herself, like she was riding out the universe's most ridiculous wave. "You okay there, Zralith Zakor or Tiber?" Sam called out, her voice a blend of genuine concern and barely contained laughter. "You look a little green around the gills, well, greener than usual." Zralith Zakor's tentacles quivered in disbelief. "Human, Samantha, you've lost a limb. How on earth can you be making jokes right now?" Sam shrugged, using only one shoulder, of course, and flashed him a grin. "Well, I've always said I wanted to lose a few pounds. Guess the universe took me a bit too literally." The other Thyrek Marines were still frozen, their antennae twitching, and what Sam had learned was their equivalent of a jaw drop. She decided to have some fun. "Come on, guys, don't leave me hanging here," she said, waving her remaining arm. "Get it? Hanging? Because my other arms—" She waved her stump. "You know what? Never mind, tough crowd." Finally, Leo Tiber, the Thyrek medic, snapped out of his stupor and scurried over to Sam, his medical kit clutched in his lower appendages. "Human Samantha, please remain still. We must attend to your grievous injury immediately." Sam rolled her eyes so hard she almost saw the inside of her skull. "Grievous injury? Please. I've had paper cuts that hurt worse than this. Although, I'll admit, it does sting a bit. Got any aspirin in that fancy alien first aid kit of yours?" Leo Tiber's eye stalk swiveled in confusion. "I'm not familiar with this treatment. Is it some sort of human regeneration technology?" "Oh yeah," Sam said, nodding solemnly, struggling to keep a straight face. "It's our most advanced medical breakthrough. Pop a couple of those bad boys and limbs just grow right back. It's like magic, but with more stomach ulcers." The look of awe on Leo Tiber's face was almost too much for Sam to handle. She bit her lip, fighting to stop herself from bursting out in laughter. Meanwhile, Zralith Zakor had managed to pull himself together enough to activate his comm link. "Command, this is Zralith Zakor. We have a situation. The human has been damaged." The response came almost immediately, panic clear in the static-filled voice. "Damaged? What do you mean, damaged? Is the human still functional? Should we abort the mission?" Sam couldn't hold it in anymore. She snorted, her laugh quickly escalating into full-blown hysterics. "Functional? Buddy, I'm not a toaster, although I guess I am down to single-handed operation now." She turned toward the comm link, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Hey, Command, don't worry your pretty little head about me. I'm just over here having an armless bit of fun. Get it? Armless?" The silence on the other end of the comm link was deafening. "Tough crowd everywhere today," Sam muttered. "Look, Command, we're fine. Well, I'm down an arm, but the mission's still A-OK unless you want to call it quits over a little flesh wound." There was a sound on the comm link that Sam could only describe as an alien gulp. Negative, human. If you believe you can continue..." "Watch me," Sam grinned, reaching down to tear a strip off her ruined uniform. With practiced ease, and more than a little showing off, she used her teeth and her remaining hand to tie a makeshift tourniquet around her stump. The Thyrek Marines watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Sam worked. It was like witnessing a train wreck if the train was made of flesh and bad puns. "Good as new," Sam said, admiring her handiwork. "Well, good as slightly used." She turned to face the rest of the crew. "Now, who's ready to kick some Karzar ass?" Zralith Zakor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sure sign of distress. "But human Samantha, you've lost a significant portion of your body mass. Surely you can't be considering continuing the mission in your current state." Sam fixed him with a look that could melt steel. "Listen here, Zralith Zakor. I didn't come all the way across the galaxy, sit through 17 hours of safety briefings, during which I might remind you no one mentioned the possibility of spontaneous limb loss, just to turn tail and run because of a little impromptu amputation." She paused for dramatic effect before adding with a wink, "Besides, Think of all the new armed and dangerous puns I can make now. The collective groan from the Theric Marines was music to Sam's ears. All right, you overgrown calamari, Sam barked, suddenly all business. Here's the plan. Raylith, Zakor, you're on point. Leo Tiber, you're with me. The rest of you form up and watch our six. We've got a Karzar war criminal to catch, and I'll be damned if I let a little thing like missing an arm stop us. As the Marines scrambled to their positions, Sam couldn't help but add, and hey, look on the bright side. At least, the Valkyrie won't be able to accuse us of being heavy-handed. The sound of alien facepalms reverberated through the corridor as they ventured deeper into the Valkyrie battlecruiser. Sam couldn't help but marvel at the alien architecture. The walls seemed to pulse with a sickly green glow, their eerie bioluminescence casting an almost unnatural light. It took her back to that time she'd eaten a questionable burrito from a food truck in Tijuana. Good times. So, Raylith, Zakor, Sam called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous corridor. What's the deal with these Valkyrie guys anyway? I mean, besides the whole war criminal thing, they seem like such a charming group. Raylith, Zakor's eye stalk turned back to regard her, his mandibles clicking, the closest thing to a sigh Sam had come to understanding from the Therac. The Valkyrie are an intensely aggressive species, human Samantha. They believe in genetic purity and are bent on purging the galaxy of those they deem inferior. Sam snorted. Oh, space Nazis? How original. Let me guess, they also love snazzy uniforms and overly complicated doomsday devices. I do not comprehend that reference, Raylith Zakor replied, though his tone softened. Yes, their attire is very elaborate, and their weaponry is unnecessarily complex. Sam grinned widely. Back on Earth, we had our share of idiots who thought they were the master race. Didn't end well for them, though. Leo Tiber, who had been silently stressing over Sam's injury, suddenly snapped to attention. And how did your species handle such a threat? Sam's grin turned dangerous. Well, let's just say we introduced them to a little thing called superior firepower, and leave it at that. Though I'll admit, losing an arm does put a damper on celebrating a victory. Hard to throw up a proper fist pump with only one hand. The Theric Marines exchanged confused and awestruck glances. How could this human make light of such a devastating injury in the middle of a combat situation? As though reading their minds, Sam added, Oh, don't look so concerned. This isn't even the worst thing that's happened to me this week. Last Tuesday, I stubbed my toe on the coffee table. Now that was painful. Before any of the aliens could react, a series of angry chittering noises echoed from farther down the corridor. Karzar Patrol! Raylith Zakor hissed, his tentacles bracing for battle. At least 5, heavily armed. Sam's eyes gleamed with manic excitement. Perfect! I've been dying to try out some new material. How do you think they'll react to a knock-knock joke? Leo Tiber looked at her with a horrified expression. Human Samantha, surely you're not suggesting humor at a time like this. Why not? Sam shrugged, adjusting her plasma rifle. Laughter's the best medicine, after all. Well, that and morphine. Speaking of which, any chance you've got some of that in your med kit? This arm thing's starting to sting a bit. Before Leo Tiber could reply, the Karzar patrol rounded the corner. They were exactly what Sam had imagined. Scaly, multi-limbed monstrosities, with too many eyes and not nearly enough fashion sense. Well, well, Sam drawled, aiming her rifle at the lead Karzar. If it isn't the welcoming committee, I'd shake hands, but well, you know. The Karzar looked utterly confused by the one-armed human addressing them so casually. Their confusion only deepened when Sam continued. Hey, you guys want to hear a joke? Why did the one-armed human cross the galaxy? The lead Karzar blinked its many eyes in confusion, then lowered its weapon slightly. I do not understand. Why did the one-armed human cross the galaxy? Sam's grin widened to a shark-like degree. To get to the other arm, of course. What followed would forever be recorded as one of the most bizarre skirmishes in intergalactic warfare. As the Karzar struggled to process Sam's terrible pun, the Theric Marines attacked. Plasma bolts filled the air, tentacles lashed out, and through it all, Sam's laughter echoed throughout the hall. Come on, guys! She shouted, firing her rifle. Don't leave me hanging! Get it? Hanging! Because my arm! Oh, never mind! Tough crowd! Amid the chaos, one of the Karzar managed to flank Sam, claws raised to deliver a killing blow. But before it could strike, Sam spun around, her remaining arm a blur of motion. Wham! The Karzar stumbled back, more confused than hurt, its alien face frozen in disbelief. Did you just hit me with your severed arm? It chittered in shock. Sam grinned, lifting her makeshift club. This old thing? I was just going to toss it out, but I figured it might come in handy. Get it? Handy? The Karzar's response was cut short by another swing of Sam's improvised weapon, sending it crumpling to the floor. Sam couldn't resist adding one last quip. Looks like you've been disarmed. The groan that followed could have come from the fallen Karzar, or it might have been from her own team. At this point, Sam couldn't tell. As the last of the Karzar patrol was taken down, Raylith Zakor turned to Sam, his eye stalks quivering in a mix of awe and disbelief. Human Samantha, that I don't even know how to describe that. Sam grinned, tucking her severed arm under her remaining one like a macabre football. I think the term you're looking for is awesome, or maybe badass. Take your pick. Leo Tiber, who looked like he was questioning his life choices, raised a limb, almost cautiously. Sergeant, I must insist we take a moment to properly treat your injury. The risk of infection— SCH infection. Sam waved him off. We've got a war criminal to catch, remember? Besides, I'm starting to get attached to this one-armed bandit look. Makes me feel like a pirate. Yar! The blank stares she received reminded her once again that her Earth references were completely lost on her alien comrades. Never mind, she sighed. Earth thing. You had to be there. Now, are we going to stand around admiring my stunning good looks and sharp wit, or are we actually going to finish this mission? As the team pressed forward, Sam couldn't help but notice the strange mix of fear, admiration, and confusion on the Theric Marines' faces. It was a look she was starting to become familiar with. After all, being the only human on an alien strike force had a way of making one stand out. But hey, if losing an arm and cracking terrible puns in the face of danger was what it took to show these extraterrestrial softies what humanity was really about, then by God, that's what she'd do. Besides, she thought with a grin, just wait until they saw what she could do with both arms. 3 hours, 2 firefights, and approximately 73 arm-related puns later, Sam found herself face-to-face with the Valkyrie war criminal they'd been sent to apprehend. Well, face-to-faces, because as it turned out, the Valkyrie had 3 of them. Well, Sam drawled, adjusting her plasma rifle, designed for ambidextrous use, on the central head of the Valkyrie. If it isn't the 3-faced bastard himself. You know, where I come from, we have a saying about people like you. The Valkyrie's 6 eyes blinked in unison, all 3 heads tilting in confusion. What saying is that, human? Sam grinned. 2-faced, but I guess you really overachieved. The Valkyrie's expression of pure bewilderment almost made up for the whole losing an arm thing. Almost. I do not understand, the Valkyrie rumbled. Is this some kind of intimidation tactic? And why are you leaking vital fluids? Sam glanced down at her bandaged stump, which had started to seep blood again. Oh, this old thing? Just a flesh wound? You should see the other guy. The Valkyrie's confusion only deepened. There is another injured combatant? I was unaware. It's an expression, you triangular-headed twick, Sam sighed, clearly exasperated. Now, are you going to come quietly, or do I have to get hands-on? Well, hand-on, I suppose. The alien's central head seemed to be processing this, while the other 2 heads were still stuck on the whole leaking vital fluids thing. Sam decided to press her advantage. Look, buddy, I've had a long day. I'm down an arm, I'm running low on bad puns, and quite frankly, the sight of your 3 ugly mugs is giving me a headache. So why don't you make this easy on both of us and surrender? The Valkyrie's right head suddenly perked up. Wait, you've lost a limb? But how are you still functioning? The pain alone should have incapacitated you. Sam rolled her eyes. Please, I've had hangovers worse than this. Now, are you going to play nice, or do I have to get creative with this rifle? I warn you, I've got a whole new set of disarming puns locked and loaded. The collective groan from her team behind her was all the encouragement she needed. "You wouldn't dare!" the Valkyrie's left head hissed. "You're bluffing. No sentient being could possibly withstand such an injury and still function, let alone make terrible wordplay." Sam's grin turned downright predatory. "Oh yeah? Watch me." What followed was a relentless barrage of puns so bad, so shamelessly arm-related, that even the toughest Theric Marines began to whimper. It was like witnessing a linguistic car crash in slow motion. Each cringe-worthy pun was another car slamming into the wreckage. "I've got to hand it to you," Sam said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've really gone out on a limb to avoid capture. I'd applaud your efforts, but, well, you're really testing my patience here. Don't make me go out on a limb for you. I'm armed and dangerous. Emphasis on the armed part. Sam continued, "I used to be all right. Then I lost my left. By the time Sam got to, I'd give my right arm to catch you. Oh, wait, I already did." The Valkyrie was on his knees, all three heads bowed in defeat. "Please," the central head whimpered, "I surrender. Just stop with the puns. I beg you." Sam lowered her rifle, a smug smile playing on her lips. "See? That wasn't so hard, was it? And hey, no hard feelings. I'm sure we can patch things up between us. Well, between you and what's left of me anyway." As Rayleigh Zakor moved in to secure the prisoner, Sam turned to her team, her face a mask of innocence. "What, too soon?" The collective groan that echoed through the Valkyrie battlecruiser was probably heard all the way back on Earth. The journey back to the Theric mothership was, to say the least, interesting. Sam insisted on regaling her captive audience with the entire history of human comedy, from ancient Greek satire to 21st century memes. The Valkyrie war criminal, still shell-shocked from the pun assault, seemed to have developed a nervous twitch every time Sam so much as opened her mouth. "And that, my fine tentacle friends," Sam concluded as they docked with the mothership, "is why the chicken crossed the road. Any questions?" The blank stares she received in return were answer enough. "Tough crowd," Sam muttered. "You'd think I'd just spent the last hour talking about quantum physics or something." As they disembarked, Sam couldn't help but notice the way the other Theric Marines were looking at her, a mixture of awe, fear, and utter bafflement, a look she was getting quite used to. Admiral Ryan Cross was waiting for them in the docking bay, his eye stalk swiveling rapidly as he took in the scene. His gaze lingered on Sam's missing arm, then on the Karzar prisoner, who seemed to be trying to burrow into the deck plating to escape Sam's proximity. "Report!" the Admiral barked, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Rayleigh Zakor stepped forward, snapping to attention. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. The Valkyrie war criminal has been apprehended with minimal casualties." The Admiral's eye stalks shifted toward Sam. "Minimal casualties? Then perhaps you can explain why Private Thompson appears to be missing a limb?" Sam grinned and threw a jaunty salute with her remaining arm. "Oh, this? Just a flesh wound, sir. You should see the other guy. Oh, wait, you can't. I beat him to death with my own severed arm." The silence that followed was so thick, you could have cut it with a knife, if anyone had been carrying knives, and if the sound of a knife cutting wasn't drowned out by the collective gasp from every Theric in the room. Admiral KZ Jack's mandibles clicked together in a soundless clatter as he processed what had just been said, then sputtered, "You, what?" Sam's grin widened. "Kidding, sir. I didn't beat anyone to death with my arm. I just used it to club a few Valkyrie unconscious. Waste not, want not, right?" The Admiral swung his gaze to Rayleigh Zakor, his eye stalks twitching. "Is she serious?" Rayleigh Zakor's tentacles curled in what could only be described as embarrassment. "I'm afraid so, Admiral. Human Samantha's combat methods are unorthodox to say the least." "Unorthodox?" Sam scoffed. "I prefer to call them creatively efficient. I mean, why let a perfectly good limb go to waste just because it's no longer attached?" The Admiral's gaze flicked back and forth between Sam, her missing arm, and the visibly shaken Karzar prisoner. After a moment of contemplation, he made a decision. "Private Thompson, report to medical immediately. The rest of you, debrief in 1 hour, and someone get that Karzar a blanket. He looks like he's about to go into shock." As Sam was escorted to medical, she couldn't resist tossing one final remark. Hey, Admiral, don't worry about me. I'm fine. The groan that echoed through the docking bay was music to her ears. When the debriefing finally took place, it was a bit more than interesting. Sam sat in the conference room, her stump now properly bandaged, though she'd insisted on keeping her makeshift tourniquet as a memento. She faced a panel of increasingly perplexed alien officers. Admiral Finn Lorne, who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, if Zerthian were capable of swallowing lemons or even knew what they were, leaned forward, his antenna twitching nervously. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice tight. "Private Thompson, you lost your arm in the initial firefight?" "Yep," Sam nodded, cheerful as ever. "Clean off. Pew pew splat, goodbye, Lefty." The Admiral's eye stalk swiveled, clearly processing this in what Sam could only imagine was the alien equivalent of disbelief. "And yet you continued the mission?" "Sure did," Sam replied matter-of-factly. "Figured, if I was going to bleed all over the place, I might as well make it count while cracking a few puns about my injury." She grinned. "Had to keep myself entertained, right? It's not every day you get to live out the Black Knight scene from Monty Python." The blank stares she received reminded her again that her pop culture references were entirely lost on these guys. "Never mind," she sighed. "Earth thing. You had to be there or, have access to 20th-century British comedy." Admiral KZCH's mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a clear sign he was out of his depth. "And then you subdued the Valkyrie war criminal by subjecting him to more of these puns?" "Subdued is a strong word," Sam mused. "I prefer to think of it as verbally bludgeoning him into submission. But hey, whatever works, right?" The Admiral turned to Raylith Zakor, who was standing at attention nearby. "Is this true?" Raylith Zakor's tentacles curled in what was likely more embarrassment. "Affirmative, Admiral. The humans' linguistic barrage was effective. In fact, several of our own troops were also incapacitated by her relentless assault." Sam protested. "Hey, don't blame me if you guys can't handle a little wordplay. I was just trying to keep things humorous." The groan that rippled through the conference room was almost Pavlovian at this point. Admiral KZCH's central eye focused intently on Sam, its pupil widening in what she hoped was admiration. "Private Thompson, I must admit your actions were unorthodox." "That's one way to put it," Sam muttered, but the Admiral pressed on. "They were undeniably effective. You completed the mission despite sustaining an injury that would have incapacitated most species. You demonstrated impressive adaptability in the face of adversity and neutralized a dangerous enemy with minimal bloodshed." Sam blinked. "Wait, are you actually impressed by all this?" The Admiral's mandibles curved into what Sam had come to learn was a Zerthian smile. "Impressed, Private Thompson? I'm considering recommending you for our highest honor, the Order of the Unbroken Carapace." Sam was momentarily speechless. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Wow. I don't know what to say. I mean, usually I can't shut up, but this thank you, Admiral." The Admiral waved a tentacle dismissively. "No need for thanks, Private. Your actions have proven beyond a doubt the value of having humans in our ranks. Your species' ability to not only survive, but thrive, in the face of injuries we would consider catastrophic as well, nothing short of remarkable." Sam felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with blood loss. "Well, when you put it like that, I guess we are pretty badass." Indeed, the Admiral nodded. "Which is why, effective immediately, I'm promoting you to the rank of sergeant and assigning you to lead a new specialized unit." Sam's eyebrows shot up. "A new unit? What kind of unit?" The Admiral's eye stalks quivered with what might have been excitement. "We're calling it the Human Resilience and Adaptability Team. CRAT for short. Your mission will be to train our troops in human-style endurance, adaptability, and what did you call it? Ah, yes, Martyrer." Sam couldn't hold it back anymore and burst out laughing. "Harat? Seriously? You do realize that sounds an awful lot like—" "Yes, yes," the Admiral interrupted, his mandibles clicking with irritation. "We are fully aware of the unfortunate homophone in your language. We thought it was quite fitting, given your penchant for wordplay." Sam wiped a tear from her eye, still chuckling. "Oh man, that's just beautiful. All right, Admiral, you've got yourself a deal. But one question, though." "Yes, Sergeant?" Sam gestured to her missing arm. Any chance I could get a cool robot replacement? I'm thinking something with a built-in plasma cannon, maybe a grappling hook. Oh, or a coffee maker. The Admiral's eye stalk swiveled, which Sam recognized as the Zerthian equivalent of an eye roll. We'll see what we can do, Sergeant. In the meantime, perhaps you could refrain from any more. What did you call them? Puns? Sam grinned. No promises, Admiral. After all, I've got to keep myself armed with a good sense of humor. The collective groan that rippled through the conference room was probably heard all the way back in the Andromeda Galaxy. 6 months later, Sergeant Samantha One-Armed Bandit Thompson stood before her new batch of Theric recruits, her shiny new cybernetic arm gleaming under the artificial lights of the training deck. The arm was a work of human and Theric genius, complete with a multi-tool, an emergency beacon, and yes, a tiny coffee maker. Sam had yet to figure out how to use that last feature without scalding herself, but hey, it was the thought that counted. All right, you tentacled terrors, Sam barked, pacing in front of the nervous-looking Therac recruits. Welcome to HFY training. That's the Human Resilience and Adaptability Team. For those of you living under a space rock, our mission is simple: to turn you soft-shelled, multi-legged mollusk wannabes into lean, mean, Death-Worlder-inspired fighting machines. She paused, eyeing the recruits with a mix of amusement and resolve. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Sergeant Thompson, we're already the galaxy's premier fighting force. We have superior strength, advanced technology, and really cool uniforms. Sam pitched her voice into a mocking falsetto, earning a few confused blinks from the Theric. Tough crowd, she muttered. Well, let me tell you something, she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. All of that means bupkis if you fall apart the moment something goes wrong. And by wrong, I mean anything from a lost limb to a really bad hair day. Not that any of you have hair, but you get the idea. She started pacing again, her cybernetic arm swaying with each step. You see, humans have a secret weapon. Something that's kept us alive on our death trap of a planet for millennia. Something that's allowed us to not just survive, but thrive in the face of adversity. The Theric leaned forward, their eye stalks quivering in eager anticipation. Sam paused dramatically before delivering her punchline. It's called sheer bloody-mindedness, and by the time I'm done with you, you'll have it in spades. A confused murmur swept through the recruits. One brave soul raised a tentacle. Excuse me, Sergeant, but what exactly is sheer bloody-mindedness and what are spades? Sam sighed heavily. She was really going to have to work on her Earth idioms with this crew. It means, recruit, that when life hands you lemons, you don't just make lemonade. You weaponize those citrus bombs and lob them right back at life so hard that it won't dare mess with you again. The recruits blinked at her, clearly more confused than ever. Sam made a mental note to requisition actual lemons for the next lecture. All right, let's try this another way, she said, rolling up her sleeve to reveal her cybernetic arm. See this? 6 months ago, this was a bloody stump. I got my arm blasted off by a Valkyrie energy weapon. Now, your average sentient being would probably curl up into a ball and wait for death, right? The Therac nodded vigorously, clearly relieved to be back on familiar ground. Well, not this human, Sam grinned. Instead of giving up, I cracked jokes, made bad puns, and finished the mission. Why? Because that's what humans do. We take our tragedies and turn them into comedies. We laugh in the face of death, give the Grim Reaper the finger, and keep on moving forward. She paused for effect, noting the glazed looks on some recruits' faces. And before you ask, no, I don't mean literal trucking, although that does remind me of this one time on Earth when She stopped herself. You know what? Never mind. We'll save the humans or crazy drivers lesson for another time. Sam clapped her hands together, the metallic clang of her cybernetic arm adding a dramatic punch to the gesture. All right, let's start with something simple. I want each of you to imagine you've just lost a limb. Any limb. Don't be shy, you've got plenty to choose from. The Theric shifted uncomfortably, their tentacles curling in distress at the thought. Now, Sam continued, her grin becoming slightly more sinister, I want you to come up with the worst possible pun about your imaginary injury. Bonus points if you can make me groan. Double bonus points if you can make Lieutenant Raylith Zakor lose his lunch. Raylith Zakor, who had been standing quietly at the back of the room, suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. "Sergeant," one of the braver recruits ventured, "why would we want to make jokes about a serious injury? Wouldn't that be disrespectful?" Sam's grin softened into something almost fond. "Ah, young Leo Tiber, you've just hit the nail on the head. This is how we cope with adversity. The very heart of human resilience, you see, is humor," Sam began, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "We make jokes about serious things, not because we don't respect them, but because we refuse to let them defeat us. Humor is our way of saying, 'Nice try, universe,' but it'll take more than that to knock me down." She paused for a moment, her expression turning thoughtful. "Besides, have you ever tried fighting while ugly crying? It's not just unflattering, it completely messes with your depth perception. Trust me, laughter is far more tactical." The recruits exchanged confused glances, but Sam could see the first sparks of understanding glimmering in their alien eyes. "All right," Sam clapped her hands again. "Enough with the philosophy. Let's see some puns. And remember, the worse, the better. Show me what you've got, you multi-limbed marvels." What followed was a painfully awkward, cringe-worthy, but somehow heartwarming display of alien attempts at humor. The puns ranged from the painfully literal, such as, "I appear to be missing an appendage," to the surprisingly clever, "I guess I'll have to go out on a limb. Oh, wait, I can't." By the end of the session, even Raylith Zakor was groaning, though whether it was from the puns or from a sympathetic wave of nausea, it was difficult to tell. As the recruits filed out, looking equal parts traumatized and exhilarated, Sam couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. They had a long way to go, but it was a start. Raylith Zakor sidled up to her, his eye stalks swiveling in a familiar, almost apologetic way. He looked like he was about to ask a very difficult question. "Sergeant Thompson," he began cautiously, "I must admit, I'm still struggling to understand this human approach to adversity. How could making light of a serious situation possibly be beneficial?" Sam thought for a moment, absently flexing her cybernetic fingers. "You know, Raylith Zakor, it's like this old Earth saying, 'I laugh because I must not cry.' But humans take it one step further. We laugh because crying won't fix anything, but a good laugh, that might just give us the strength to keep going." She grinned, suddenly filled with mischief. "Besides, you should see the looks on the bad guys' faces when you crack a joke right after they think they've got you beat. It's priceless. Really takes the wind out of their sails or tentacles, as the case may be." Raylith Zakor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "I see. And this sheer bloody-mindedness you spoke of, is that really the secret to human resilience?" Sam shrugged her cybernetic shoulder, the soft hum of the arm accompanying the motion. "A healthy dose of spite, and the burning desire to live long enough to say 'I told you so' to anyone who ever doubted us. Oh, and coffee. Never underestimate the power of caffeine." She clapped Raylith Zakor on what passed for his shoulder. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go calibrate my arm's coffee maker. I'm thinking of calling it ground control. You get it? Because coffee grounds and also because it's part of my arm. Oh, never mind." As Sam walked away, whistling an off-key rendition of "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," Raylith Zakor watched her leave, a mixture of confusion, admiration, and just a hint of fear on his face. One thing was certain, the galaxy would never be the same now that humans had joined the fight. And somewhere out there, the Valkyrie were probably rethinking their life choices. After all, if this was what humans could do with one arm tied behind their back, or, in this case, blown clean off, imagine what they could do at full strength. The universe, it seemed, wasn't quite ready for humanity. But ready or not, here they came, armed with bad puns, worse attitudes, and the kind of stubborn resilience that made cockroaches look like quitters. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Karzar High Command was in complete disarray. Reports were flooding in from every corner of the galaxy, each one worse than the last. Their once unstoppable forces were being routed, not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by something far more insidious. "Morale! It's those damned humans!" General Zalkor Vithal raged, his 3 heads bobbing frantically. "Ever since they joined the Zerthian Alliance, our troops have been laughing at us." The other members of the High Command shifted uncomfortably. Laughter was a concept the Valkyrie were utterly unfamiliar with, especially in a combat situation. "Surely it can't be that bad," one of the junior officers ventured. "I mean, they're just jokes, right?" "Jokes?" General Zalkor Vithal fixed the unfortunate officer with a glare from all 6 of his eyes. "Jokes? Do you have any idea what it's like to have your fearsome battle cry answered with a pun? To have your threats of annihilation met with sarcasm? It's demoralizing." He jabbed a clawed appendage at the holographic display in the center of the room. "Look at these reports. Our troops are surrendering in droves, not because they're outgunned, but because they can't stand the humans' horrible wordplay." The display flickered to life, showing footage from various battlefronts. In each one, Karzar soldiers could be seen throwing down their weapons, their faces twisted in what could only be described as pun-induced agony. "Make it stop!" one Karzar soldier wailed as a grinning human advanced on him. "No more! I'll tell you everything you want to know! Just please, no more jokes!" The footage cut to another scene showing a human with a cybernetic arm, the infamous Sergeant Samantha Thompson, addressing a group of captured Valkyrie. "All right, you scaly spusses," her voice crackled through the speakers. "I've got a proposition for you. We'll let you go on one condition. You've got to learn to laugh at yourselves. And I mean really laugh. Not that weird hissing thing you do that sounds like a deflating balloon animal." The Valkyrie prisoners looked at each other in confusion and fear. "Oh, come on," Sergeant Thompson continued, her tone light and teasing. "Don't be so uptight. Have a laugh. It's free, and you might even live to tell the tale. Imagine how much easier it'll be to face defeat if you can do it with a smile." Her grin widened. "It's not that difficult. Here, let me help you out. Why did the Valkyrie cross the galaxy? To get to the other tide. Get it? Because you guys kind of look like octopi and octopi living there, you know what? Never mind. We'll work on it later." The footage cut out abruptly, leaving the High Command in stunned silence. General Zalkor Vithal's central head drooped in dejection. "Can't you see? We're not just losing battles. We're losing our very identity. Our fearsome reputation, built over millennia of conquest and subjugation, is being whittled away by dad jokes." One of the other officers spoke up hesitantly. "The dad jokes, General?" Zalkor Vithal's glare could have melted steel. "We must do something," he declared, his voice rising. "We cannot allow these humans to keep spreading their insidious humor throughout the galaxy. It goes against everything we Valkyrie stand for." A moment of silence fell over the room, broken only by the soft shuffle of tentacles. Finally, one of the senior strategists spoke up. What if we tried to beat them at their own game?" Every eye in the room turned to her. "Explain." General Zalkor Vithal growled, his tone dripping with disbelief. The strategist swallowed audibly. "Well, if the human strength comes from their ability to laugh in the face of adversity, perhaps we should learn to do the same." The silence that followed was so thick, you could have heard a pin drop, if anyone had been carrying pins, and if the Karzar had ears to hear with. "Are you suggesting," General Zalkor Vithal said slowly, each word carefully measured, "that we, the mighty Valkyrie, scourge of 1,000 star systems, should learn to tell jokes?" The strategist's tentacles curled in embarrassment, but she stood her ground. "Not just tell jokes, sir, but embrace the entire human philosophy. Learn to laugh at ourselves, find humor in adversity. It's clearly an incredibly powerful weapon. Why not use it to our advantage?" For a long, tense moment, no one dared to speak. Then, to everyone's surprise, General Zalkor Vithal started to laugh. It began as a low chuckle from his leftmost head, spreading to a giggle from his right, and finally erupting into full-blown laughter from his central mouth. The rest of the High Command stared in shock. Had their leader truly cracked under the pressure? But when the Zalkor Vithal's laughter finally faded, there was something new in his eyes. "You know what?" he said with a smirk. "Why the hell not? We've tried everything else." A nervous junior officer scurried forward. "Yes, sir?" "Get me every piece of human comedy you can find. Movies, books, stand-up routines. I want it all. And someone track down a human cultural expert, preferably one who actually gets humor." As the High Command scrambled into frantic activity, General Zalkor Vithal allowed himself a small smile. It felt unfamiliar, but not entirely unpleasant. "Well, Sergeant Thompson," he murmured under his breath, "you wanted us to learn to laugh at ourselves. Be careful what you wish for. The galaxy won't know what hit it when the Valkyrie finally get a sense of humor." And so began the great galactic comedy arms race, a period that would go down in history as either the funniest or the most cringe-worthy era the universe had ever known. But that, as they say, is another story.